what a fun shoot we had the day before their wedding. We went to the St. Francisville, to this abandoned railroad track, and there was a boxcar sitting, just an empty boxcar sitting in front of us, and behind, and the doors were wide open so you could see through the boxcar. Behind that was another boxcar. So I could see straight through 2 sets of boxcars to the trees in the background. I put her in the foreground and put him in the background and had them look like they're holding hands. He was like a tiny person you could imagine with perspective. So she's just got her hand outstretched, and I said, more to the left. So I lined it up to where their hands were looking like they're holding hands, but they really were 30, they were 30 feet apart.
Yeah.
It's the cutest photo ever, all in film with medium format. It was a beautiful shot. The next day was the wedding. I can't tell you how bad I did. I missed every key moment at the wedding.
We would like to thank our title sponsor, B1 Bank. B1 Bank knows that entrepreneurs like you are always thinking one step ahead. So you need banking solutions that can keep up. It begins with lending. Does your business need working capital or financing for new equipment? How about a real estate or a construction loan? Good news, the B1 lending team is ready to learn your goals and help you find the best lending option available. Now let's talk about uncomplicating your daily cash flow. B1 offers a full array of treasury management services that let you collect funds faster, pay funds more efficiently, and access your information with powerful online tools. Most importantly, B1 understands the value of working with local nonprofits to build a stronger community. They believe in giving back through hands-on involvement with their B1 Community Outreach Program because it's simply the right thing to do. B1 Bank. Be uncomplicated. To learn more, visit b1bank.com. Equal housing lender, member FDIC. Hello, I'm Andrew McClendon, your host of the Next Entrepreneur Podcast. We're here today in the Propel Production Podcast Studio in Baton Rouge, and we welcome our guest, Mr. Aaron Hogan, CEO of iWander. Aaron, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Very cool to meet you yesterday for the first time. Tour your facilities. Very cool structure you have there. A lot going on. I want to dive into it. But why don't we start off by you telling us and our guests what iWander is and what you guys do?
Yeah, well, I have been a photographer for just about 21 years. I started iWander as a project while at LSU. I had to create a website. It was one of my journalism classes. So I majored in journalism and minored in photography.
Got it.
And one of the classes was create a website. This was using Front Page 2000.
This is
2000.
Yeah, 2000.
Or 2001, I think, actually. Yeah. I had no idea what I was doing. I had just, I'll go a little bit back into how I got into photography, but I'm talking about iWander at this very moment, like how the business came about. So I took really crappy photos and put them on a website, called it, for the first week, called it Aaron Hogan's Photography. And then I was like, that sounds lame. I thought, in the future, what if I had a studio that like had other people shooting for me? I don't want to be Aaron Hogan Photography.
Right.
I just thought, what if I get good at this? I wasn't.
And so what is the meaning of iWander?
iWander, there's a piece of prose written in 1838 by, it's a piece of transcendentalism prose by Thoreau. It's called Nature. And there's a drawing in, like, associated, like a woodcut associated with the piece of literature about this. It's a picture of this little guy who's got, it's an eyeball with stick legs and arms coming out of it.
Yeah. I've seen that.
And it's walking around the countryside.
Wow.
And it blinks. It's just before cameras. It blinks and captures in its mind's eye the scene that it just saw.
No way.
So it's the idea of a camera before cameras were a thing.
How about that?
In the early 1830s. And so iWander, a wandering eye that just doesn't miss a thing. Yeah. And that's exactly me. Everywhere I'm looking at the details. I often miss the big picture because I'm focused on the details so much. My wife's like, how do you notice that? How do you see that?
Yeah.
So
Okay, well, I interrupted you. Now, look,
Yeah.
I'm going to go back and ask you a bunch
That's
of questions
good.
about the beginning, but tell us what I Wander does today.
Yeah.
Just today.
So I Wander photo, video for personal and for business, and photo booth, video spin booth rentals. Our studio itself is a rental, is available for rent for productions and for events. So we are a content creation house.
Content creation.
Yep. And we do a range of events. Started at weddings, migrated to commercial work, and now doing a lot of a mixture of personal and professional. And I also teach classes, which I absolutely love.
Yeah, that's cool. I want to talk about that. When did you first pick up a camera?
I wasn't one of those kids that always had a camera with them. It was probably right at the end of high school. Actually, I graduated a year early, sat out a semester before going to college, went to Italy for 3 months with a guy who my parents knew from their when they got married in the 70s. This guy from Baton Rouge ended up settling in Italy, had a wife, kids. He came back to Baton Rouge randomly to bury his mother. He hadn't been in Baton Rouge in 20 years. My parents ran into him and they were like, "What are you doing in Baton Rouge?" They hadn't seen him in probably at that point 25, 30 years. And he said, "Well, my mom just passed away." And so my dad, just thinking I might be interested in it, said, "Would you be interested in taking my son back to Italy? He's got time off." He's like, "Oh my God, that'd be great." So my dad propositioned to me. He said, "Look, this guy that you'd be staying with in Italy doesn't have much money. You'd be having to pay your rent essentially, $300 a month, but he'd let you stay there for a few months if you want to. You'd have to work with him. He grows daylily plants. He was a botanist as a hobbyist. Okay,
Yeah.
He didn't have a lot of money, but he grew unique hybrids of daylilies. So I was just blown away. I thought, oh my God, what a great opportunity. I would have started LSU the next semester, but I had this downtime. So I go to Italy in the Piedmont region, just a little bit outside of Turin, in a small town called Asti. I think it's where the Asti Spumante drink comes from.
Yeah.
And so Mark is his name. He grew daylilies. He was interested in stained glass art. He was a writer, very artistic guy.
Yeah.
Took me under his wing, talked to me about light in a way that I'd never even given a thought about because he made stained glass art. We went to churches and he would point out the light coming through the stained glass and illuminating the pews. Things that I would have just in the past just been like, oh, that's pretty. But now he's given why it's pretty. Like, look at the way the light direction is at this time of day. So that's the first time I ever thought about light. I didn't have a great camera. I had a point-and-shoot film camera, which took really bad pictures. In fact, I remember the moment that I got interested in photography during this trip. We were driving through Liechtenstein, small country in the Alps, and I remember him driving, and I saw this light coming through this tree that was yellow, like golden leaves, backlit by the sun. For the first time ever, without him prompting it, I said, "Oh my gosh, the light." He said, "You want to get a picture?" I said, "Yeah." So he pulls over on the side of the road. I get my point and shoot camera, click, get back in the car. This is film, so it was probably 2 weeks later whenever he let me go to the drugstore and develop it. The photo came out bland and just ugly. Didn't have the presence of light that I felt. And so that was probably the moment that I realized I wanted to capture life and things as I saw them. And to look at the picture, I wanted to be taken back to that moment and feel it all over again.
Yeah, that's very cool. So when did you get a real camera?
When I got back from...
you jumped right into it?
Jumped immediately.
Really?
I went to a family event that Christmas. My uncle was there. He said, "How was your Italy trip?" I said, "Well, I think I want to get into photography." While I was in Italy, I would set up my little point-and-shoot camera on a little tripod and do self-timer photos of me wearing disheveled clothes because I would work in the fields with the daylilies. My pants had holes in them. My beanie cap, it was cold up there. Beanie cap and coat had like torn, it was just, I looked like a homeless kid, really. I took a bath about once every 3 weeks because I didn't have running water. Once every 3 days I took a bath. So it was a weird trip, to be honest. It was not what I expected Italy to be like, but we're in a third world part of Italy in the north area, which didn't have normal services. They had electricity, but no water.
But completely transformational in your life.
Oh, for sure. I loved that experience. I just made 18. So when I got back, Christmas, my uncle said, "I have a camera that I'm not using anymore. It was an old Olympus. Do you want to buy it? $100. It was a deal. So I bought that, and that was the beginning.
So then you started to learn about all things photography.
Yeah. Started LSU. I had immediately put a dark room in my bathroom.
Really?
I was living with my parents, of course. I just started LSU. Put a dark room in the bathroom. I would seal up the door with tape to where no light could come in there. And then eventually my grandmother had a shed in her backyard that she let me use as my new dark room that was permanently set up, because the bathroom was inconvenient. It's like I had to use it for showers. The shed that my grandmother had, unfortunately, had a rat issue. And so the rats would eat into the boxes of paper, which let light come in there, which ruined it. There was rat droppings everywhere on my darkroom equipment. Every time I'd go in there, it smelled like really old attic, but it was just a shed in her backyard. Just had mildew. Yeah, just gross. But I did photo shoots in there, even nude women photo shoots in this gross environment. I mean, I was excited about light and creating my own. So this is all my freshman year of LSU.
That's amazing. So you got into I mean, it's one thing to photograph, but to develop. I mean, I guess back in the day, I really only knew like 2 people who did that, who developed their own photographs.
It was the way to do it with less expense, to be honest. It all came down to money. The paper was less expensive than going to a lab. I just developed my film and look at them under a light box and not have to print anything. I just learned to look at negatives, and it was cheaper, because developing film cost just the chemical cost. It was cheap.
Do you remember early on in those days when you started to develop some of your images and you're like, oh man, that's a good one. Like where you thought to yourself, hey, I got a little talent here. I mean, can you remember a particular?
I do. It was my first hired shoot. It was around the LSU lakes, and it was a young family that had their first child. The child was barely 1 year old. And I remember taking a picture of the dad's outstretched hand and the baby's little hand put into the dad's palm. And it was a close-up. It just showed the size relationship between the baby, like this trust. Yeah. It was just a black and white. I cut it off the dad's wrist and the baby's wrist. And so it's just 2 hands, one being lightly held by the other, And the dad cried when he saw the picture. And I knew that I had something because I was so into the details. And I realized it's not about the big picture. People care about the little things that they don't necessarily see on a daily basis that I can maybe make them aware of.
I'm interested in how you would define your style, but I'm also interested if you feel like that style has changed over the 20 years, your photographic style.
Good question. The thing that I got interested in the beginning hasn't changed, and that's 2 elements, light and emotion. The presence of light, whether it's just there, found light, natural light coming into a space from the sun or a window or something, or artificial created light. I got into flash photography early on, so I was creating it whenever there wasn't light. I was doing studio work in the beginning as a freshman. Everybody else was, just finding light. Oh, look at the light coming through the window. I was like, I want to make that. I want to learn how to create that to where I can always feel that. So light was a big deal. Emotion, I did weddings in the beginning. The second paid job was a wedding, which is crazy because it's actually a funny story. Tommy Talley, who's a wonderful producer of video in town, he has a studio, Echo Tango, a agency in town. His wedding was the first wedding that I shot in 2002. Tommy trusted me when he shouldn't have. This was May of 2002. We had just finished our year. He went to the thrift center and bought himself a suit. His wife found a dress at an estate sale. And these clothes were probably 25 or 30 years old at the time. And my gosh, what a fun shoot we had the day before their wedding. We went to the St. Francisville, to this abandoned railroad track, and there was a boxcar sitting, just an empty boxcar sitting in front of us, and the doors were wide open so you could see through the boxcar. Behind that was another boxcar. So I could see straight through 2 sets of boxcars to the trees in the background. I put her in the foreground and put him in the background and had them look like they're holding hands. He was like a tiny person you could imagine with perspective. So she's just got her hand outstretched, and I said, more to the left. So I lined it up to where their hands were looking like they're holding hands, but they really were 30. They were 30 feet apart.
Yeah.
It's the cutest photo ever. All in film with medium format. It was a beautiful shot. The next day was the wedding. I can't tell you how bad I did. I missed every key moment at the wedding. I missed the kiss. I missed the bride walking down the aisle. I missed most of the first dance, and I missed the cake cutting. What more could I have missed, right? The reason I missed it all was because I was trying to show off and wanted to shoot with the fancy new camera that had fewer shots on a roll, but it was a medium format, so it was better quality.
Right.
Instead of a traditional 35 millimeter where you get like 36 frames. I was like, I'm going to use the better camera. Well, when the key moments were happening, I was changing film.
Oh my goodness.
I didn't have two of those cameras.
Yeah.
So I was missing every moment changing film and realizing, okay, my desire for perfection has gone too far. And that defines me, unfortunately. Yeah. Everything I do to the nth degree. Push it harder, better quality, better customer experience. But in the beginning, I wasn't aware of timing at all. Yeah. So I just took gambles and I messed up. I charged him, my original invoice before the wedding day was $575 for the wedding and the pre-portrait session. After the wedding, I said, I feel so bad for doing this. I slashed through it in red line and put $275 and hand printed every photo that came out in the darkroom with the rat crap over the next month. Literally a month. And so I made probably negative $2,000 on that wedding, given the cost of the film, and it was a pretty good experience.
That's funny. I was curious if you had mentors along the way that you picked up on things, design or styles that you ended up morphing into what you do.
First mentor was a wedding photographer that took me under his wing. This was 2002 in Baton Rouge. This guy charged $600 a wedding. He did 40-something weddings a year by himself. He had no assistants, nothing. He was all film. His name was Joe. Joe lived alone in an apartment and would have me come over to his house and showed me everything about lighting, taught me about how to position the lights for studio, portraits, headshots, that kind of thing. Unfortunately, Joe was kind of sloppy, so he dressed poorly at weddings and his stomach hung out, over his belt line. So I didn't learn how to present myself from Joe. I learned more about the way he cared for the customer. Despite his disheveled look, he really went above and beyond for every customer. And that meant showing up way early, shooting a little bit longer, giving them extra shots that they didn't ask for, that kind of thing. So I love that guy. He passed away about 10 years ago, unfortunately.
So now you're doing weddings. Tell me about all the different types of. I've seen dance and babies and product shots. What are the things that I Wonder specializes in today in photography?
Yeah, still weddings. We do about 30. We did 38 weddings last year.
Wow.
When I started weddings, my first big year was my senior year at LSU. I did 62 weddings that year alone.
No kidding.
So much that I decided to drop out of school. So I dropped out my senior year from LSU, never got a degree to this day. Good decision. Hired my mother that year as my bookkeeper and office manager. And so weddings has carried us through as our biggest product line, a service line. And then from there, it's family portraits. We do a good bit of family portraits, extended family, especially around Christmas when everybody's got their grandparents in town. I love those shoots where it's multiple generations.
Yeah.
Grandkids hanging on grandpa's shoulders, little ones, climbing all over. I have a studio now that we have a big white leather couch. I let the kids jump up and down the couch as if it's a trampoline while the grandparents are just like laying there, So we do headshots by volume. Headshots is now taken over as far as our biggest service that we do. Really? Not the most profitable, but as far as the number of sessions, commercial headshots, realtor groups, banks, different types of commercial institutions. So when you Google, headshots in Baton Rouge, we're on the top of that.
Right.
I do children, and we do the full baby plan. So newborn, 6 month, 1 year.
Oh yeah.
Even starts with maternity. A lot of maternity because I have a studio now. It's all natural lit. Maternity was always something that I thought I had to go outside to shoot, but now I do that almost exclusively in studio and create light.
That wedding album that I looked at that you guys produce, I mean, just a phenomenal product.
Thank you.
Really just stunningly beautiful. I wish I had one of those for my daughter's weddings. I mean, just really, I'd never seen anything like it. Very impressive.
We do the wedding albums to this day because we want to give the bride something that's tangible, because she just generally wants digital. That's the biggest thing that most of my clients ask for is, I want the digital files. Well, of course. But what about something to hand down to future generations? Or when someone comes over, to show them your photos, because you'd be proud of them. When people book I Wander, it's not just one of the vendors of their wedding. We really capture the wedding in a way that no one saw it.
Man.
So we go a bit extreme with the books. The book you looked at was 100 pages, and they're thick. It weighs about 9 or 10 pounds, and it's a solid wood cover. Leather back of it is leather, and it's an heirloom product.
Yeah, for sure. Fantastic. What's your favorite subject matter if you had to boil it down to one or two of?
I love seniors in high school, and even going more specific, underwater seniors who are not necessarily on the swim team. They can be on the swim team, but let's say that they do dance. A lot of the seniors we work with do dance. They take lessons somewhere. They're a dancer in their school. So I've asked these girls to bring their prom dress from maybe a year past or something, or some homecoming dress, prom dress or homecoming dress, to do an underwater shoot. And I love that. It's extreme. It takes about 3 hours. It's a little bit of a challenge. It's a lot of a challenge, especially if they're not super comfortable underwater, because they've got to have a face that's relaxed as if they're not underwater when they drop down. And I'm underwater too. I'm on scuba equipment. I've got a housing for my camera. I'm using my normal camera, but it's in this gigantic case that's got a clear dome. Yeah. It's a production. We have lights that we put underwater that are waterproof. But we also have a flash overhead that's safely positioned, that is shooting light straight down.
Well, when you mentioned this yesterday, I'm like, what in the world is he talking about, underwater pictures? And then I saw some, and it's just something I was completely unaware of, but it's something that you do, and one of the many things that you specialize. Hannis T. Bourgeois provides accounting services, litigation support, as well as tax and assurance services to companies and individuals throughout the region. With offices in Baton Rouge, Denham Springs, New Orleans, and Hammond, their team of professionals have a wide range of specialized expertise and give personalized attention to each client they work with. HTB serves all types of business structures, including corporations, private businesses, startups, individuals, and more. So call them today to learn how they can help you. Reach out to them by phone or learn more at their website, www.htbcpa.com. A little testimonial here. HTB has been my accounting firm for over 30 years and have guided my initial company from startup to expanding to numerous operating companies. HTB has provided guidance in helping us expand across the U.S., doing business in more than 30 states. Flat out, HTB has made all the difference in the world to our business. This podcast is sponsored by NAI Latter & Blum, Louisiana's leading commercial real estate firm, offering expertise in every discipline, including office, industrial, retail, multifamily, and corporate services. Their agents guide you through the real estate process from start to finish, using a host of marketing, prospecting, and analytical technologies. As leading entrepreneurs, your valuable time and resources should align with the most trusted name in commercial real estate, NAI Latter & Blum. Learn how they can work for you at www.ladderblum.com. Turnkey Solutions is a nationwide cybersecurity and IT systems expert, providing the services that growing businesses need to stay ahead of hackers, hurricanes, and IT nightmares. With 24/7 support teams and offices across Louisiana and Texas, they bring peace of mind to companies of all sizes. Their 5-star rated team provides lightning-fast IT support with the cybersecurity and business continuity solutions today's businesses demand. When you're looking for a technology partner to provide you with peace of mind, Find out more by calling them at 225-224-6594 or chat with them online at www.tks.la/NXT. So in addition to the underwater photographs, you guys are doing 360 spin machine?
Give me 1 second. So the underwater thing, I just want to mention really quick. Howard Schatz is a photographer in New York who is a phenomenal dance photographer. He's the inspiration behind all the underwater stuff.
I see.
So for anyone who's interested in like knowing the process of that, Howard Schatz is he's in his 70s now, but he's an insanely good underwater photographer that inspired me. I actually went to see him speak, and that's where I got my
another
excitement.
mentor.
Yeah.
And you told me about this wedding bounce house that...
So yeah, for wedding events and rentals, we do photo booth, video, a 360 video spin booth, and now just in the last week we got a white wedding bounce house, like one of those inflatables that kids have at their parties. But we did it for weddings because, well, I've only been to one wedding and seen one, and I was like, this is insane. And my wife said, do not buy one. I was like, I'm a big kid at heart, so I said, okay, I won't buy one. Well, then this winter, without telling her, I just bought it, and it shows up at the studio one day. She's like, what is that? Is that what I think it is? That night we inflated it and had a staff party, and everybody was doing flips in there and jumping. It was crazy cool. Oh, so that's going to be available for rent at events and weddings. The video spin booth is interesting. It's a 360 experience. So you stand on a platform. It's pretty small, like a 40-inch round platform you stand on.
Right.
And a camera goes around in a 360-degree circle around you 6 or so times, but it's recording slow motion. The video plays back sped up and then slows down and then goes in reverse, like a boomerang on Instagram. Yeah. So it does a forward, reverse, and then fast motion. So we have a money gun that shoots up fake money in the air. People spray money as they're spinning around it. It's insane. There's lights that are flashing as you're going around it. It's a very cool experience. It outputs a 15-second video. So this thing has been pretty hot rental item for our events, not just weddings, but anything. The Baton Rouge cancer, the cancer ball that happened back in the fall.
That's so cool, man. Creativity. You had mentioned about a show that you've done, a few shows that you've done. I was really impressed when you told me about the turnout of some. One of them was at the Manship Theater. This is for your photography work.
Yes, right? We did a show. First show I did was the underwater work at the Healthcare Gallery. That was in 2016 because the big underwater series I did was the whole year of 2015. I did 60 sessions. Every week I shot an underwater person. Some days was 2 to 3 sessions. So every Monday I was out in this pool. A friend of mine let me use their pool. It's even heated, so I was able to shoot in the winter. And did mostly dancers, some actors. This was all a personal project. None of these people were paying me. I was just basically doing a casting call. Had a huge turnout of 400 people that showed up at the Healthcare Gallery at the show. I had a huge album available that ended up selling. It's a 16 by 20 book. So this book was made in Portugal. It's almost the size of this table, half this table, and it's open. You can't put it in your lap. It's too big, but the prints are 16 by 20 each.
Oh my goodness.
I sold a good bit of the work actually that was framed. The next show we did was the following year after I got back from Iceland. I had compiled work from Italy, Iceland, Croatia, Thailand, and Scotland, and then a bunch of the West, like around Arizona and the Slot Canyons. Did a landscape show because not many people see my landscape work. It's not a big part of I Wander. It's personal stuff.
Right.
So this was the personal side of me, and I had a great turnout. That was the Manship Theater at the school, the gallery there.
Right.
Can't remember the name of the gallery on the second floor.
Yeah, I was going to say
right above the bar. It starts with a B. I'm so sorry. Having a brain fart. I'd say probably, I think 300 people turned out there, was just pretty amazing turnout. My wife combined that show with a show showing two of our short films that we had just made the previous year. So it was like a film and photography show in one night.
So those films that you just referred to are shorts? But
yes.
I wanted to talk about that, but I also wanted to give a little light to the fact that within I Wander, in addition to photography, you're also doing some videography for particular clients?
So we got into video because we started doing my wife and I started doing our own short films.
So your wife, Jency, is an actress,
Yes.
producer, director?
And director, and teaches acting classes to teens and adults in our building upstairs.
Okay, so I was curious how the two of you met, and was that relationship built out of a shared interest in storytelling? I mean, her through film, you through photography. I mean, am I reading more into that, or is that pretty obvious?
We were meant to be together. We saw each other 3 times before, 3 different times, a year and a half apart before we finally said, okay, we're supposed to be together. I was doing a random video at her grandmother's house one day in 2008 for a nonprofit organization called Heritage Ranch. Shot that. She was there randomly. I said hey to her. She said hey to me. It was very small. I think I gave her my business card, which had a very embarrassing portrait of a girl in a bikini. I said, hey, I ought to do your headshots. She said she had just gotten back from LA and was doing acting. I said, so she didn't take me serious at all. She did file away the business card though, which can come back later in the story. So a year and a half after that, I was at the Manship Theater photographing a dance performance for Of Moving Colors, one of the dance companies that I shoot regularly for. She was speaking on stage between the dances. So there'd be a dance, and then she would come up and do a monologue, and then another dancer would come up and she'd do a monologue. There was photography of her behind her as she spoke, projected on this full screen, that was about describing the experiences that she had when she lived in her car for 3 years in Los Angeles, which is a true story. I didn't know it was real. I thought it was a fake story. Her story is crazy. She ought to be on your show at one point, maybe, to tell that. It's insane. I thought it was literally a made-up story because it was so theatrical, 100% real. I mean, wow. I can't go into it all right now, but I didn't say hey to her at that show. I just saw her from a distance, and I thought, I think that's the girl I met a year and a half ago. Very, very small memory of that first interaction. Okay, fast forward a year and a half after that, I'm in Whole Foods shopping in the frozen food section near the dairy aisle, kind of the back of the store, and she walks by me with her buggy, and I said, Jency Griffin, as she comes by, and she's like, yes? How do you know me? And I said, well, this is going to be weird. I was the photographer at the show you did like a year and a half ago at the Manship. And she's like, I remember that. I think I saw those photos. And I said, and I actually think I was at your grandmother's house a year and a half before that. And you gave me like a cup of water, and I gave you my business card. Like, I don't know why my memory was so good this day. It usually is not that good to know her full name 3 years later. What are you doing? She's like, well, I'm picking up stuff to go to singles group tonight for my church. I was like, oh, okay. What about that? That sounds sad. What about after that? She said, I'm available. And so I got her number right there at Whole Foods. We parted ways. I called her that night. We met up for coffee at what used to be called Perks, now Garden District Coffee. Man, we sat inches from each other and whispered because there was nobody else in the coffee shop. It was 8 o'clock at night. They were about to close. And we just had the best conversation. I said, what are you doing later? She said, well, I got work in the morning. I said, I just installed a projector screen in my house. You want to watch a movie? And so that was the beginning. We were inseparable since.
Oh, that's awesome.
A month and a half later, this is an important part of the story. A month and a half later, I'm on a photo shoot downtown. You know the abandoned building across the street from the Hilton Hotel on Lafayette Street?
Yep.
It's a 2-story gutted brick building.
Yep.
Trey owns it. I was shooting upstairs. Yes, I was breaking the law. I was trespassing in your building, Trey. I was shooting upstairs, this little 2-year-old girl, and there are holes in the floor. Huge holes in the floor.
I know it was.
Holes that I know where they were, like embedded in my brain because I shot there often.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, this day didn't go so well. So I'm photographing the young girl, and I'm backing up, and the girl starts walking towards me, and I instinctively just kept backing up without looking behind me for some reason. I was on the edge of the hole, and no one saw it, and no one was paying attention to me. I took one step back and dropped 18 feet on concrete and landed on the ground below. It's an 18-foot drop. Thank God I landed on my left foot, not my head. I'd be dead otherwise. I was laying in a pool of blood for probably 20 minutes before paramedics came. My mother was actually my assistant that day. My mom used to assist me. She thought I was dead. Wasn't moving. I was unconscious, I don't remember the actual impact. I remember the fall. And whenever I got into the ambulance, my mom told me what happened. And I couldn't see out of my left eye. I had an orbital floor fracture, so my left eye had dropped downwards in my skull about a half inch or something. My whole eye looked like a bag of just loose skin. It was disgusting. My left foot, Jimmy Lalonde, amazing surgeon in town, did a surgery on it, put 19 screws in it, put it back together. My heel had broken in 4 parts. I was in a wheelchair for 3.5 months. My then girlfriend, Jency, was pushing me in my wheelchair as I was photographing. I was relentless. Nothing was going to stop me. I was like, these brides need their photographer. I'm going to show up. The only wedding I missed was that weekend after the accident. My foot was elevated above my head in the wheelchair, and my eye had a patch on it, of course. I couldn't see anything. They did the surgery on everything that same week. I was able to go to the next wedding the next weekend. And from there on, I got better and better, and I was able to eventually be on crutches after almost 4 months. And then as soon as I got on crutches, my wife and I, my then girlfriend and I, had an engagement session we were doing for someone else in San Francisco. Someone from Baton Rouge was wanting to fly us out to San Francisco to do their engagement photos. And I had decided I was going to marry her, Jency. So I bought the ring before the trip, and I waited until the engagement session was completely finished. The couple actually knew that I was going to propose, but I didn't want to do it in front of them. So we parted ways after it was a 3-day session, Sacramento, Napa Valley, San Francisco. We parted ways in San Francisco. We were at this beautiful place in Marin County, the headlands across from the Golden Gate Bridge on the other side. And I thought, this is too obvious. She's going to think this is the place I'm going to do it at. So I didn't propose in the most obvious picturesque place. The next day we were at H&M looking at clothes in the dressing room, and I thought, this is perfect. So I put my crutches to the side. She had just taken off this rainbow dress and put on some other outfit. I take her rainbow dress and slip it over my body on my knees. She turned her back around to face me, and I'm on one knee wearing her dress, holding the ring and asking her to marry me. It was perfect the way I saw it. She laughed like crazy. It was like, are you serious? I said, this is it, baby. Are you going to marry me? And so we got married 1 month later. We didn't waste any time.
That is awesome. What a great story. But she was an actress and had been doing films. And Allison told me yesterday she was in the Dallas Buyers Club.
Yes.
Seen that?
Yeah, she was with Matthew McConaughey. Had a wonderful shower scene with him.
So, but anyway, you guys got married, but you started to do some shorts. And tell our audience what a short is.
Short films are anything from like 3 minutes up to 15 minutes, typically. There are some shorts that could be technically shorter than 3 minutes, but most film festivals allow a short to be between 3 and 15 minutes. So 2014 was our first one, 3 years after we got married.
Okay, so the purpose of shorts is what?
2 reasons. Getting experience for the young filmmaker. There's festivals that just allow shorts in. In fact, in Louisiana, the North Louisiana and Shreveport, there's a festival called the Louisiana Film Prize, which is nothing but short films. And it's the highest monetary award for any short film festival in the country. $50,000 goes to the grand prize winner. Our director of most of our short films and our feature film that I'll talk about in a little bit was the guy that won the year before we entered our first piece. So he's a proven winner. Shreveport's a very family-friendly crowd, so you can't do something super edgy because they just won't vote for it. Because it's an audience award plus a judge award combined to choose the winner. So Alexander Jeffrey, who's our director, had won, which is impressive. So he basically partnered with us and taught my wife everything she now knows about directing and producing films. Start with short. So the short is for film festivals, proof of concept. Investors that might want to give you money for a feature want to see, what have you done? What if you turned this short into a feature? That's another thing. Yeah. I have shot a short that's now going to in pre-production. The director's raising all the funds to create it herself, and so we did a short first. Based on that short, investors see it as like, okay, you can do this. Let's go ahead and make the feature.
Right. Fantastic. So like you said, it's how a producer, a director, actors, videographers, cinematographers, lighting, every part and piece of the process proves. It gives them a vehicle to do their work in an affordable manner, so that otherwise, if you only could do a feature, then these whole groups of people wouldn't have this leg up to get started. So that's
right.
really cool how that works. So you and your wife did several of those.
We did 7.
And did
shorts.
who did the writing?
Alexander Jeffrey wrote 4 of the ones that he did 6 with us. He wrote 4 of them with my wife. So my wife would come up with the concept. He would create the actual screenplay and take her, and he would do the dialogue as well. He has a writing partner as well who co-writes with him, Paul Peterson. So Paul and Alexander were on the ticket as having written them. My wife didn't get writing credit because she's just coming up with like this is what I want to happen. This is the general synopsis.
And you guys were on the cover of the December issue of the Baton Rouge Business Report. It was an article about the film industry in Baton Rouge, and very cool picture. I'm guessing that was in your studio.
Yes, Colin Ritchie shot that. We had no idea it was a cover story. We had no idea that we were going to be the cover photo. That was a delightful surprise.
Yeah, and so that was really cool. But so you guys have done a feature film, you and your wife?
Yes, we've done 2. One of them, unfortunately, has never seen the light of day because the director took all the footage from us and never made it. And she got in a pretty significant argument with my wife after the film was done. I shot for 60 days on this film. It was my first actual film that I shot. She and my wife had a falling out. It was a very small issue. The woman got upset and came into my office during business hours and took the hard drive with all the footage. I don't have my own footage for a 60-day feature. Wow. So the actual first feature, I'll say the real feature that we did was a romantic comedy shot in 2020. Days of Daisy is the title. And it's a film loosely based on my wife and I, how we met. The characters are a bit fictionalized. The guy playing me does portray himself as a photographer, so that's accurate. My wife, her role playing herself, she named herself Daisy. Daisy's her favorite flower. She is a librarian, wants to have children. She meets this character named Jack, the guy being portrayed as myself, and he's a photographer that has been fixed. He had a vasectomy before, like years back, and tells her that he's never having children. Well, they fall in love, and then there's this conflict in her soul, like, okay, I want kids, but I want to be with Jack. And so this is the actual conflict that Jency had whenever she and I were dating. In the reality, Jency chose me over kids back in 2011 whenever I proposed to her. Interestingly, in the process of making Days of Daisy, I was one of the producers, and also I was a set photographer, but I was helping bring a lot of the people to my wife who would be willing to invest in our film.
Right. And
so the funny, ironic story is, after the film was edited, which was around the end of 2021, I watched it with my wife privately, and while I'm looking at our own film, I was having a change of heart about my decision not to be a father. And it was crazy because everybody that knows me as having said, I'm never having kids. I love them. My brother's got 3. They're awesome nieces and nephews. It's not for me. This is a decision I made when I was 12 years old, actually. I remember specifically acknowledging I'm going to get a vasectomy one day. I learned that term. My dad taught me what that meant. I said, well, I want one of those. And my dad just said, okay, whatever you want to do, son, it's your life. So I did before I married Jency. She knew I was having it done in reality. So we did that, and then we got married 2 months later. And it took 11 years for my heart to be changed. And it was crazy because there's no such thing as a reversal after this many years. So our plan of having children is IVF. So we're doing that right now. We're going through that process.
What a story. We would like to thank MBD Automation for their support of the Next Entrepreneur podcast. MBD Automation is a mechanical install contractor with a program-centric focus. So what do these guys do? They install conveyor systems, VRCs, platforms, singulators, sorters, and all sorts of other types of automated equipment. Who do they work for? They work for systems integrators, manufacturers, end users, in fulfillment centers, airports, mail processing facilities, and projects in the defense industry. MBD Automation works for numerous Fortune 500 companies across the United States and has a list of international clients that they perform work from the U.S. as well. If MBD Automation can help you on your next project, you can find them online at mbdautomation.com. This podcast is sponsored by Mayhall, Fondren Blaze, a Louisiana business litigation firm offering sophisticated legal advice that is tailored to meet the needs of their individual clients, including a wide variety of litigation, complex business negotiations, corporate formations, closings, and title examination. As leading entrepreneurs, your valuable time and resources should align with the expertise of MFB, a Louisiana practice made for business. Learn how we can work with you at www.mfbfirm.com. Could you or your business benefit from a comprehensive financial plan? Our sponsor, Centura Advisors, is a locally owned firm in Baton Rouge, Louisiana that specializes in personal and business financial planning, tax planning, corporate retirement plans, and investment management. We provide an all-in-one wealth management service so busy business owners like you can take back your valuable time. Visit www.centura-advisors.com to learn more. Centura Advisors, it's time to plan your future. You know what I find interesting talking with entrepreneurs in the creative field is this constant pursuit of continued creativity, right? So when I look at what we talked about in your photography and all the things that are new, whether it's underwater or the 360s, in addition to everything that you do there. But over your career, then you add videography, and then you add, the film side of business and the shorts and the feature films, and what comes with that is cinematography. What I have picked up from you in the short time that I've known you is that there's this constant pursuit of improvement and expansion in the creative field of what you do. And you were talking yesterday about how you've been improving your skill set on the cinematography side of things. I wonder if you could talk about that for a minute.
Yeah. I decided at the beginning of the year of 2022 to take 6 weeks off. I learned about this amazing opportunity in Maine, like around Rockport, Maine, called the Maine Media Workshops in College. It's for cinematography and directing and filmmaking, among other things. They have photography classes too, but the things I was interested in was the cinematography. My wife said, it's now or never. Just do it. Just take the class. It's expensive. You got to live there. You got to live in a dorm, but there's 3 meals a day. There's lobster on Fridays. It was this incredible experience with connecting with other creatives across the country and the world, because there were people there from India, from Europe. Man, I decided to do it. So the whole summer, I put a pause on my business, not back home. There were my staff still working behind the scenes, but I wasn't shooting anything. I wasn't bringing in any income. I just decided to pour myself into classes for cinematography. Steven Spielberg's gaffer, his lighting technician, was there as one of the instructors. These guys are doing major films and music videos with like major artists. I was able to learn from some of the industry's best cinematographers and even directors, because there was directors talking to us as well, collaborating with the cinematographer on how the vision of a film comes to be. And gosh, it was like extremely awesome. I got to shoot a short film, only 3 minutes each, every week.
Wow.
We did 5 short films.
No kidding.
So I had to script it, cast it, write it myself, and then find the locations, and then edit it all myself. I can employ the help of other students who are in class, but they had their own films to make too. this was a boot camp on steroids for filmmaking, and I loved every second of it. I would talk to my wife every single day. She ended up coming up here at the end, and we ended up spending a week in Maine after the class was finished. Maine is awesome in the summer. Yeah. So anyway, that is the beginning of me like pouring myself and dedicating to a future in cinematography. So photography and video, our commercial video business, I would call it it's my job. I love it. I love my job very much, but that's how I make my money. The filmmaking side is like my passion project that I want to do. I want to do a sequel to the Days of Daisy film that we created, for example, that I want to create, and I want to shoot it myself. Yeah. It'll because of the change of heart that I had with having the child. Yeah. That is the future of me, pushing myself into cinematography, not just creating videos for companies, but making stories that change hearts.
You talked about there being a spiritual aspect of that story. Is that what you hope to bring out?
Absolutely. This story, the romantic comedy that my wife and I made, Days of Daisy, the first one, is a lighthearted film. It's family friendly. The one I'm going to make is going to be a much darker, gritty film with a spiritual undertone, because it was God that changed my heart about the whole kid thing. It wasn't just watching the movie. Like, God was using my own art to speak to me. Insane. Like, I literally, when I had the epiphany that I was supposed to do this, I saw 2 pink orbs floating in the sky in front of me driving down the highway. They weren't clouds. They were just pink balls of light. And I take that to represent 2 children that I'm supposed to have. It was the weirdest thing. I have a photo of it. So the
2 girls, it sounds
2
like.
girls.
I have 3. So.
My wife couldn't be more happy. She's pushing me into filmmaking with everything we do. Every decision we make is, Aaron, are you pursuing your passion? The business will take care of itself. Are you taking time to take care of yourself creatively to pursue that? Because I don't want that. She's like, I don't want that class that you did to just become a thing you did one year. Yeah. She's like, keep on working for that. Yeah. Write that script for the sequel. So she's in my camp.
That's awesome, man. That's so cool. Look, there's so many things I want to talk to you about. Yeah. So I might start going rapid fire at you here.
Yeah, that's good.
You talked about passion for teaching, and you teach some courses in photography at your studio. And you identified yesterday that, look, you could really, as the entrepreneur in you, could take this, could digitize the process and get these lessons out there. But you really have this passion for the hands-on teaching process.
I love it.
Yeah, talk about
teaching. So giving back to Baton Rouge comes in many forms for me. One of them is sharing my knowledge of photography and my passion for lighting. And so I do a basic, intermediate, and advanced classes for photography, including a photo editing workshop, and then an advanced lighting only workshop, like a 2-day thing. So we just sent out an email blast. Anybody's interested can go to our website. There's an education page. All the classes are listed. They're in person. It's about 12 to 15 people in class in general. Hands-on. It's 4 parts, about a month long each. We do field trips. We go on location. I have models lined up. We talk about landscape photography, how to use your own equipment you've got, or what maybe equipment you need to buy. So I love teaching. In the future, I would like to digitize these classes for people that can't make it in person. You're right. Yeah. I love the energy I get from interacting with people.
Okay, I want to talk about your building, your office, your studio, and your home. It's a very beautiful structure. I've admired it as I've passed it on Goodwood Boulevard for a few years now, I guess. Got a nice tour of it yesterday, and it's really cool. The studio is impressive, and everything that you can do there. Tell us about that.
So 5 years ago, we bought the land on Goodwood across from the library, and had no idea what I wanted to do with it. So it started with me just thinking, I want to have a studio and maybe a small hair salon to cover part of the mortgage. And so that was the inception. We started designing with Dwayne Cruth, a wonderfully talented architect, and we began to realize we could potentially have a house in here. So we modified it to have the house in the top floor. My wife had one request, high ceilings. We have like 15-foot ceilings up there. And then the studio is all natural lit with a huge glass roll-up door that faces Goodwood, so it lets in that north-facing light. Anybody in the photo world or video world knows north light is the best. The salon expanded as we began figuring out how this building was supposed to look. We realized, I want to have more rental space to make more income from that. So now what we've got is a wonderfully homogeneous space where we have, in one building, we have our photo studio in the ground floor with our office space where my photo staff works. There's about 10 people that work in there on a daily basis.
A production area.
Production area. Our office manager in the front with our operations director in the front as well. And then my sales girl in the order appointment room, because we meet clients to show them their photos in person.
Right. Selling
the photos from a huge screen. And then the back half has the hair salon with 4 different tenant suites. One actually is a tattoo artist. So that's for, they run their own business. It's not affiliated with I Wander. It's called Bokeh Beauty Suites.
Right.
Above that is the house, which is a 1,400 square foot, two-bedroom house. It's a lot, the building is a lot like my brain. It's a lot of just, it looks, and you'd think it's busy, but it's all organized in its own spaces, but there's just so much stuff going on at any one time. My wife has an acting business called Love Acting that's above the studio that she teaches her acting classes, and she has her employee office in the top center of the building where my drum kit is.
Yeah, it's a very entrepreneurial building. I mean, with all the things you just mentioned, there's different revenue streams there, and that's all. It's very cool to showcase your work in the way that you do. It's a perfect place to do it.
One thing we're doing is we're expanding the hair salon. We bought some land in Denham, and we're doing a 16 salon suite spaced out in Denham coming in the next year.
So you've enjoyed the process of becoming a landlord?
Very much so.
Yeah.
Especially within that industry, the hair and beauty industry, because I'm already familiar with it. I don't do hair in the least bit, but I just respect their work so much.
Well, I was intrigued to learn how one feeds off of the other. So, for example, the salon can send their clients over for photographs and vice versa.
Yeah,
that made a whole lot of sense. All right, let's talk about some business stuff. I was curious, when you're hiring creatives, what is it that you're looking for in a hire to have a comfort level that they're going to fit in with your organization and the way that your business is run?
The hardest thing to do, I've found in this business, is to scale a creative enterprise of this type specifically. Video is easier to scale than a photography business. A photography business is built on one person's eye and one person's decision-making skills about what is in that frame.
And at a split second, right?
Right. How do you duplicate that? How do you scale that kind of business? That's the question I've asked many consultants. I've spent a lot of money in the last 5 years on business consultants who deal with a lot of different types of industries. Some of them are creatives. Some of them deal with scaling ad agencies. Those things are different than photography specifically, because I want to eventually get out of the seat of the main producer of the work to get into filmmaking. That's my goal in the next 5 years. And so I'm not saying I'm not going to do photos. I'm just saying I want to begin to push myself into filmmaking. So I can't do both because I'm splitting my time too much and I'm compromising the thing that my heart's crying out for. So when I'm looking for creatives, it starts with, honestly, people in school. I found it a little bit easier to start with someone that is newer, is fresher, that hasn't solidified, here's my style, this is what I do. Someone who's just really hungry still. Occasionally, I'll come across someone who's tried the business for a while and is sick of doing all the books themselves. Most photographers that I know, probably 99%, are just small operations. They don't have a team, they don't have a staff, they don't have a manager. They're just themselves, maybe one other person who edits, and that's it. So those people may get burnt out after 5 to 10 years.
That's a common phenomenon in creatives, in that there's a left brain, right brain thing sometimes, and some are, exceptionally good at being creative and not so good at running a business, and vice versa. But there are those, and I think you're one of them, that can do both well, but it's more rare than not.
Yes. So I'm looking for those that just do the creative well.
Yeah. So are there parts of managing business on the administration side that is soul crushing to you?
Absolutely. That's why I have 2 managers, one that manages the whole business and one that manages me. I needed a boss. I hired a person. I said, look, this is going to sound weird, but I'm making you my boss. I want you to tell me what to do. I need you to run the meetings. I'm a bit abrasive, I'll be honest. I have a way to run people off, and I got tired of my abrasive nature because I want things done so specific.
Yeah.
And I realized I can't communicate that well with the people that are creative. They need a softer person to kind of encourage them to say, that was really, really good. What if you changed this one little element?
Yeah.
I just go straight to, why don't we change this one thing?
Yeah.
I forget about the sandwich technique. It's a problem that I have. My wife has brought it up to me many, many times. My mom and dad, whenever I was younger, said, you don't need to have kids. You're just too abrasive. You're too selfish, So that's kind of what led to the whole me not having kids thing.
Yeah.
But it's the part of me that I want to change. And I'm hitting straight on by learning under this person that I brought into my business to be my voice. And I'm learning what she's doing and I'm applying it. And now I'm starting to change. Actually, I'm softening up.
So theories on delegation?
I delegate, oh my gosh, it's almost everything. There's business development that I like to do, but setting up the equipment, communicating with the clients, my own email, I delegate even that and make sure that they write an email from themselves, not acting as me. But yeah, I just like, hey, it's so hard to tie me down. I'm good enough. Yeah. I know how to hire people that can do all those things for me.
Okay, so how would you define, if you had to boil down your business strategy into some very simplistic explanation, what would you say about that? Your business strategy?
Yeah, my business is ADHD. and when I was in Italy, the guy Mark I live with said to me, there's a thing called ADHD. This was in 2000. It wasn't. He said, right. You have it. You need to be on drugs. I never did get on any kind of Adderall to focus, but my business is all things to all people, except I have had to understand we are a high caliber operation. We do things with excellence, 5-star experience in every single interaction with every client, whether we like them or not. And so I hate saying no to people. It's a thing that is a problem that I have. And so I've decided to let the pricing say no for me. So we've just increased rates to a point where I know that I'm charging way lower than the value that they're receiving. I always make sure that the rate is less than the value that they get.
Right.
Because I go 110% every single time.
Well, the quality is there. It's very impressive. Look, I've enjoyed chatting with you. I just want to, we could talk for a lot longer. You're a great storyteller, and I've enjoyed the conversation. I want to wrap up. Last question on when you look out 5 years, you've mentioned cinematography, or maybe further down the road, what do you see as changes in your business?
I will have multiple photographers that are doing specific things that are niche photographers in family, in seniors, in headshots, in commercial, instead of just me and another guy that kind of split all the work, which runs us ragged most of the time. But I've gotten addicted to that. So in the near future, we're going to be having divisions of photographers in those different areas. I'd love to have another branch of I Wander in New Orleans because a lot of our work is there. So it makes sense to expand the brand to New Orleans. But it's also gonna add an element of branding, because I would like to add in a person that to turn us into an agency. So instead of just a content creative house, being a creative agency by having the branding arm added to it. Yeah. That's within the next 5 years. Absolutely happening. And I'd love to outgrow our space and have another office that maybe just handles the branding element.
Very cool.
I appreciate this opportunity. This has been great.
Yeah, I have really enjoyed it. A pleasure to get to meet you. I always love getting the inside view of any business, but particularly the creative side. So, Aaron, thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the time.
Yes, sir. Aaron was such a great storyteller. I enjoyed those so much. I loved how he brought color to how he fell in love with photography, and it was through light. And what a fantastic story that was. But that remained constant throughout his career and his growth, from photography to videography to cinematography. And you can see where his passion is. He wants to continue to grow in that creative aspect. And he wants people to feel that spiritual connection to his work and his films. He's got a clear vision for the future for the next 5 years, not only for himself, but for his business. And just very exciting to see someone in the creative field be that focused on how they're going to grow their business. So we really appreciate Aaron coming in. It was great touring his facility and seeing the amazing work that he has. It's very, very high quality. We appreciate you guys watching, and we'll catch you next time. We would like to thank our title sponsor, B1 Bank. They can be found online at b1bank.com. The Next Entrepreneur is produced by Propel Productions. You can find more information at propelyourstory.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the Next Entrepreneur podcast and hit the bell for notifications. You can also follow us on social media. The links are in the description below.